And let me just make sure. And I also have another art journal that I'm almost finished with. So I've got 3 journals here we'll be playing with. And if you don't have it within reach and you're going to be making along with us, you definitely want to have your graphstone pencils around because we're going to be playing with those some. So I'm looking forward to hearing how your journals are moving along now that we're at our second live stream. And please do ask any questions about materials. And I hope that you will share with us how the journal's been going so far. So let's switch over to the desktop view. Thank you. And I've got here a nice new page. And I wanted to show this because this is something that I've been playing with more and more in sewn spined journals, is really letting whatever pigment I'm using really soak into the gutter so that I get some nice color just peeking through. And this is one way that for me, it's helpful to kind of deal with this white page anxiety, is just this little bit of color that's peeking through from a different page. And I think it's probably from here, right, where the ink settled in and now it's coming through here. And so it makes this page feel maybe a little bit less intimidating. So I wanted to start this page with some very appropriate ephemera. This is the tape from the ArtJournalSnacks box. And I always try to peel it off before I recycle that box for something else so that I have a little bit of ArtJournalSnacks ephemera to include on my journal. I really love the way that this tape tears because it has those reinforcing fibers inside of it. So it kind of, it tears in this like really, really beautiful way. And sometimes you're lucky and you get some of these little fibers hanging out like that, which for me, I don't know, I just find that very fun and satisfying. And it kind of does the work for you of looking really interesting. I think we'll frame this page with a little bit of the tape. And if you're wanting to kind of follow along with me and work in a similar way and you didn't save the tape, any kind of ephemera at all will help to give you, you can think of this as like putting bookends on the page so that you have a place to work. And again, so you're getting rid of some of that blank white page anxiety that might come up. Got 3 little pieces of tape here, and now I have my space to work in. So one of the ideas that I had for today was to play with representing something. And some of you know, way, way, way back in the beginning of ArtJournalSnacks, I shared about one of my favorite journal artists, Candy Jernigan. And write down her name for the book is called Evidence. I'll put it up here so you've got it in the frame if you want to take notes on that. It's a beautiful book, but one of the things that she does is she will, in her art journal, have like the actual thing. And sometimes she'll tape it down and sometimes she'll keep it there and sometimes she'll just draw it. So I thought it might be kind of fun. So whatever you have in your space, it doesn't need to be a natural thing. If you have something natural within reach, you can start to do that. And these graphstone pencils are so lovely for doing little sketches. And this is where your art journal can become more like a sketchbook. So think about how we've been doing a lot of more journaling and more mixed media work in our art journals, but you can absolutely have it have some sketchbook components to it as well. So sometimes when I'm sketching in my art journal, I'm less worried about rendering the thing perfectly. And I'm more interested in the shape and the pattern and kind of capturing the essence of something. And this is a really good tool to learn for journaling because sometimes you're journaling and you don't have a lot of time, right? You're like somewhere and you have something that is likely to blow away or won't stay put for you to spend a whole lot of time working on it. But you can absolutely still get the idea of something. So right now I'm just kind of going for the essence of the underside of this fern. And you might notice that I'm doing something kind of strange with my pencils. I'm using it, which is I'm spinning it as I'm drawing. And I don't know especially why I do this. It just kind of feels good. It feels a little more free, a little less tightly controlled. Because a pencil can feel like something that you're trying to draw perfectly with. And what we're going for today is more sketching and again, getting the essence of something. And I know there's the ability to zoom in with a camera. Sometimes I wish we could zoom in on the sound of pencil on paper because it is such a satisfying sound. The sound I wish I could teach the parrots to do. One little sound that Griffin makes, my smaller parrot, he makes the sound of when you swallow coffee. And that's kind of it's such a particular sound. And he can do that. So I feel like with a little bit of close proximity, maybe I could train him to make the sound of the pencil on paper. But you should let us know in the chat if you have a favorite art sound. There's so many good ones. Okay, so I'm going to get out the Crown d'Arche crayons now. Is the underside of this fern, I'll hold it up a little closer, has these wonderful, that's how the fern reproduces, right? These little spores. And like, look at the beautiful texture of that. They're so fun. So I was thinking it might be kind of interesting to make almost like a pattern around the rest of this page using that idea of those little yellow, orange, brown spore shapes. So again, what we're going for here is not necessarily rendering the thing that you're drawing perfectly, but capturing the idea of it. So sometimes you can look at something from multiple sides. Or try to think about how does this thing feel in my fingers. I'm using the Crown d'Arche crayons just dry right now. In a minute, I'm going to go back in with some water and a water brush and blend them a little bit. So I want to keep some of the line work. This is why these Crown d'Arche crayons are so great, is that you can, with just a little bit of water, move the pigment around, but keep some of the gestural quality of the line. So I'm trying to keep some of those brown lines more line-like and blending the orange and yellow together. And I'm going to keep a little bit of that yellow on my brush. And now start to fill in around the shape of this sketch. And this is where you can actually use the crayon itself and just take your brush, and you don't have to use a water brush for this. You can use a brush and paper. This is what I have on my desk right now. Eric must have heard me talking about them and talking in the background. So starting to add a little bit of background around the edge of my sketch, and what you're preserving here is the kind of the delicate line of the pencil. I was using the HB pencil to sketch with instead of the darker soft 6B one. And we'll go in with the 6B in a moment. One of the things that's really, I think, kind of precious and special about an art journal or a sketchbook, you get to look at someone's sketchbook or see what they're putting in there, is you see a lot more the evidence of the person's hand, right? The way that they draw, the particular way that they put lines on paper. I remember when I was undergrad and in the art department, and there was a faculty show in the first month of being at school. And one of the professors wheeled his whole, like, it was like a little red wagon in of his sketchbooks, and he had that just sitting in the gallery. And there was a little stool next to it, and you could sit down and just look through his sketchbooks. And he mostly did figure drawing and drawings of people, but there were like his little notes in the margins, and it just felt like such a precious thing and such a vulnerable thing to sit there and wheel in your little red wagon of all of your sketches. It's really, yeah, just quite beautiful to do that. It obviously stuck in my mind. More than 20 years ago. Okay, so I'm going to put this fern now underneath here. And I'm going to use the 6B pencil now. And those spores will see how they make these wonderful little bumps. So now we have a different version of this same fern on this page. Now I'm going to get the click art pencil out, or pen out, satisfying click. And for this, I was thinking about doing kind of another way to represent something that I see on this fern, which is those little spores, just doing little circles about the size that they are. Just adding this in as a pattern, a little bit of visual interest here on the page. That's another art sound there, right? The click of these click markers. They also make a really nice sound on the paper. Apparently today is the sound effects live stream. So one of the things that some people have asked about is, like, how do you know what other patterns to add? Like, it can be a little bit, it can feel a little bit, I don't know, mysterious, maybe is the word to use. Like, where should these different patterns and textures go? And how do I know what to put on there? And the answer is you don't really, it's not about knowing, it's really about trusting yourself. And I think also just trying things and letting yourself try different ways of adding patterns onto the page. And one of the things that's so wonderful about an art journal is if you don't like it, you can cover it up, right? If you don't have to keep it. So when I get to a certain point on a page, I'll take a look at it and start to see, like, do I want to do something else to this? Does it feel done? Or does it feel like I need to accentuate any spaces or cover any spaces or change things in any way? And I'm looking at some of the other ephemera that I have on my desk here. One of the things that might be kind of interesting is to take, this is one of those translucent sticky notes, and I had stuck it onto something else, so it's got a little bit of graphite on this part. It might be kind of interesting to add it in. And hot tip with using sticky notes in your journal, you might want to use the sticky note at first to see if that's where you want it, and then use a little bit of the glue stick to really stick it down more. And actually, I think maybe I'll do it over the top of these little strings left over from the tape. Interesting to get them stuck down on there. And then have this little translucent flap. I'm 100% confident that that ink is going to stay. So I'm going to go over it again. Thinking about this, where this fern frond came from in the first place, and I was doing a walk with some older adults that I work with, and normally I don't bring stuff back in, but these were so pretty that I brought quite a few back in and used them in my journal in some different ways. So I'm going to set this little guy aside. It's pretty flat now that I've done a rubbing from it, so you can see that the little spores have pressed through onto the other side of this. And I might want to come back and do some more things with it later, but I'm going to set it aside for the time being. To make sure that that ink is going to stay put. I think I'll put a piece of wax paper there just in case. So I always try to keep some odds and ends of wax paper around for little spots like that. You don't want to have stick together. Okay, so here we have another blank page, but you can see that again, that little bit of ink that's coming through there. So I wanted to show a different way to incorporate a sketch into your journal. So this is a little bit of one of the interesting pieces of paper. Down first. And almost use the white of the paper like a frame. For a piece of art. Now to see what I have. Okay, here's another funny thing that's on my desk. so many reasons why it might be there, but here's, here's a little blast from the past, maybe a little pokey figure from Gumby. And just start to do a little bit of sketching with some searching lines. What is the shape of this funny little horse? So if you are hesitant about sketching, one thing that can help is you can see I'm holding my pencil towards the middle of it. Whereas when you're writing, you hold closer to the tip, or when you hold closer to the tip, this is also more like precise, very tight drawing. If you move your hand back so that it's kind of more balanced in your fingers here, you can't do that really tight sketching or that tight drawing that a lot of times we get caught up in it needing to be perfect. And then we get mad or we get frustrated or we give up because it doesn't look quite right. And a lot of times the thing that we appreciate in looking at the drawings of masters is that it's so much more loose and it looks effortless, and a lot of times it's about how you're holding the tool. So really think about moving that pencil back. You can do that with your paintbrush also. You can also do that with a pen, like really not be so close to the tip, because this is just like, I have to control every little mark. And there's a place for that too, right? Like there's a place for having very tight, controlled drawing. But I would argue, or maybe not argue, but recommend that you consider being a little bit more loose in your art journal, a little more playful. If you don't know about Gumby and Pokey, I'm very sorry, but maybe some of you, this is a familiar little character. My brother and I really loved watching Gumby when we were little. We thought the claymation was so cool. Okay, so I got my little beginnings of Pokey here. And now you can start to refine it more. So this was sketching with the HB. Now I'm going to go in with the 6 and start to put in where the shadow is. So where Pokey is touching the paper. And the nice thing about putting some toned paper into your journal first is then it just becomes a little bit easier to add the shadows. I'm also using the side of the pencil to blend it more. You can start to push harder when you're a little more sure about, like, oh yeah, that's where that line goes. Right? You see the little mold lines where Pokey was made in some kind of a mold for this rubber. So now I've shifted my hand because I have it a little closer to the end because I'm starting to do a little bit more detail. Changing the shape of things a little bit. So now on the toned paper, I'm gonna actually mix a little bit of red into this. It's kind of an orangey red. So it's kind of in between these two. And this is going to obscure some of my pencil work, but you can see because this was a thicker paper that some of the pencil lines have debossed into the paper. So they've made an impression, which is quite a few of you probably got some of this thicker paper in your ephemera packs, or maybe you have some other in the studio. And that's kind of the neat thing about using pencil on thicker paper like that is you get the leftovers or the after effects or the debossing of the pencil into the surface, and then that becomes another texture that you can use. Another bit of visual interest. So the 6B graphite will move around a little bit. You can see it's kind of darker here on the surface because it's just putting a lot of graphite onto the surface of the paper. And especially if it's thicker paper like this, it will move around a little bit, which I find actually kind of desirable. Because you get more of that like a graphite wash, and it helps to blend that shadow a little bit as well. Yeah, I'm glad to see there's some Gumby fans amongst us. It just was such a cool world. Kind of strange. Be interesting to see Gumby interpreted today with the all the technology that we have today. But I mean, I think claymation is such a fascinating thing, right? So much work to produce those things, so much effort. I think that's part of what my brother and I really appreciated about watching Gumby was just like, wow, like all of those movements that we're seeing, those are all individual little adjustments to these little clay figures. How cool is that? And now Gumby has a nice mane and tail, and some of these shadows are getting a little darker. Really like the softness of how this turned out. We'll be in the scene here. But one of the other things that you can do if you put down toned paper and you have your crown d'arche around is you can do what we've talked about many times. You've hung out with me much at all, making mixed media work or doing art journaling, is this idea of losing the edges, right? So helping the white paper blend into this ephemera that I have here. So the white crown d'arche will put a nice white highlight here at the top of my little Gumby drawing. And I can also add a little bit of the white in the eye background. It has a little bit of lines in the tail, mane. Might be one of the weirdest things I've ever drawn into my art journal. But all of these things are just like evidence of what's around, right? It's kind of interesting to be here in the studio and see what's on the desk. What did I not move with me? And what stories can I tell with these things? So on this facing page, I think what I want to do is do a lot of this, just kind of big words. You see the textures from the other page coming through here a little bit, which again is just one of the things that I really enjoy about art journaling is that a page is not all by itself, right? The page has some evidence of the page that came before and maybe some evidence of the next page to come, right? It kind of, they evolve one into the other. Not that you have to work on them sequentially, and I very often do not. You know, some people like to number their pages and go through them one at a time, but I tend to like to go back and forth, even when I'm not doing ArtJournalSnacks and I'm, you know, not working in journals, multiple ones on a live stream, so I have to switch because of that. But just in general, I like to go back and forth between different pages and work on things for a little while and then go on to a different page and then come back to something later. Not always, but it's something that I generally like to do. Okay, so one big word, and then when I do big letters like this, I like to, again, kind of lose the edges of them in some places. So letting some of the letters blend together, helping this page blend in a little bit into the rest of what's on the paper here. A little of the tail can. So big word is also another way if you kind of get done with something that's a little more fussy, so like a small little sketch. And then you kind of think, well, now what? And now what sometimes is like, oh, a cool piece of ephemera that you can include. And sometimes just a big word. And don't think about it too much, just whatever word comes to mind first. That is looking, I'm going to let this dry for a little bit. So I'm going to set this on the side somewhere. And I wanted to come to another page that I've been working on and kind of show some decisions here. You'll notice that Sammy has added to this one. This is Sammy beak marks coming through this paper. Luckily, it's not into part of the paper that I wanted. But hazards of living with a parrot. So I made this and kind of combined these two things together and hadn't really decided yet what else I wanted to do with it. But I really loved the color in this rope and thought it might be an interesting pattern to continue to explore. So kind of taking the edge of something that's in a collage and then making it into your own thing. So taking this idea of a twisted rope and what could that change into as I move the color around on my page and continue that pattern in a different way. So maybe they become closer and closer to circles. And then it almost starts to look like beads. And then maybe the last one here is part of that circle that hole that I cut out of this journal. So something I'm really enjoying about these click art pens is, again, what happens when you get them a little bit wet. So they do bleed a little bit, but you still have your line work. And this is probably my favorite kind of thing to use in an art journal, because just with a little bit of water and some pens, I can go from writing to drawing to painting with just very few tools. And if you want to think about making your journaling practice really sustainable, we can't all sit at our studio desk for hours at a time every day. And so thinking about what materials can really travel with you throughout your day and enable you to do a lot of journaling all through your day. So because of the kind of star-like effect here, I thought it would be a perfect opportunity to bring in some more of the metallic brush pen. I got the green one, but as we noticed in the first live stream, the green does have a little bit of blue in it, especially in the glitter itself. So even though this page is mostly blue and I'm using a green pen, there is some blue in this that I'll pull out when I get it wet. Because this part's kind of going into shadow, I think I'll probably go back in with the pencil in that area. A little more shadowy over there. And this again is one of those tools that maybe wasn't originally designed to use like this, right? I don't think when Pentel made these that they were thinking, oh yeah, people are definitely going to be like watercoloring with this. But I think you will very often see me use materials in ways that weren't necessarily intended, and that's very intentional on my part, because again, I'm always looking for what else can I do with this tool so that it doesn't become like a gimmick, right? Sometimes I think there's this fear of, especially for those of us that really love art materials, like, oh, I have so many art materials. And you like something, and then does it just sit around for a while because you think that you can only use it in one way? And so that's why I really like to take materials and try using them in lots of different ways, because it ends up giving me infinite combinations. Right? I can use all the things exactly the way they were intended, but then what else can I do with them? And when I get something new, how do I combine that, right? So one of the things that I really hope for all of you who have been doing Art Journal Snacks with us for a while is that you're kind of tapping back into some of those other materials that we've used in other boxes, or things that you already have in your collection, and combining them with the materials. So the boxes are really curated to be their own thing. And please do add your favorite materials in, right? Like, I kind of wondered at first if people would keep each journal, like, what do I want to say, like, keep the materials only what was used in that box. And, it's one way that you could do it. But again, if we're looking at building an art journaling practice, meaning this isn't just something that you do for a quarter and you never do again, I'm really kind of biased and hopeful that you all will take this on as something that becomes a lifelong practice, like it's been for me. I just found it so valuable. So to that end, I hope that you're finding interesting ways to combine materials.
Hey, Erin, Sarah
Yeah.
here, just jumping in for a moment. I, first of all, love this page, the colors, loving it. But we are about halfway through class today, so just want to
Gotcha.
get the time check.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, so I love this bubble. I wish it could stay, this little bubble right there. All right, so I have this other piece and I'm a little bit unsure right now if I want to like spend a lot of time cutting this apart and maybe adding some more in. Or one of the things that I like to do when I have a piece of collage material that I really love and I have a little bit more of it is kind of hold on to it for a bit and decide, do I want to incorporate that into this page? Or is there something about this page that I wish I had explored in a different way and that I have an opportunity with this second little bit of rope? So I think I'm going to hold on to that rope for the time being. And I'm going to let this dry. And you see my bubble popped and it did stay as like a little bubble shape there, which is pretty exciting. So I'm going to set that aside so I don't accidentally wipe my arm across it and lose my fun little bubble. Okay, I'm going to set this here. And I'm going to go into the art journal that I've been playing in. This one is a modified accordion bind that I also stitched the edges with a zigzag stitch with my sewing machine. And then I covered it with plastic from a birdseed bag. So I started this one on the 20th and it's almost done. But I wanted to go to a page that's like in process and add a little bit more onto this. So I have some ink here that I've activated with water and then a little bit of watercolor.
Hey, Erin,
Yes.
before you jump into this, can you just push your sketchbook up a little bit more? There you go.
There.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Because I had a couple pieces that we got in the ephemera pack that I thought might live really nicely with this. And the first one is this beautiful yellow paper. It's got like a really interesting texture. It almost has some spots on it that are smooth and it feels, I don't know, it doesn't feel like paper, although I know it is. And actually, I don't know, maybe that side is more interesting. So one of the things to look at with any of the pieces, the little scraps of colored paper, is to look at both sides before you glue it down, because sometimes what would traditionally be known as the back side of the paper is more interesting. And that's the case with this one. So I think I am going to stick with the back side. And so with these little scraps, when I'm thinking about gluing it down with glue stick, one of the things that I do sometimes is I'll put glue on the whole piece. And then I'll rip it. So then it's a little bit easier to stick it down. Then I have my little yoga pose. And this is one of those ones where I'm having a hard time because I really like both of these shapes that the little figures are in. And I also really love both of these poses. So this is a king pigeon pose and wheel pose. And I don't know, there's something that's really making me hesitate about sticking down one side or the other. I mean, one thing that I could do, if you can look at your poses up to the light, you can kind of see the other one coming through. But I actually maybe I'll do this with a pencil. Draw the other one on here. I think the line work The simplicity of the line work on these is so fun. Little yoga shorts. Have like the little bit of the shadow or the ghost of the other pose there. And that feels satisfying to me to not lose it entirely. I could have made it so it flips, but this is the one I like the best. So I think I'm going to stick with that one. It's useful to not be precious in your art journal, to not get so attached. It's a hard thing with some of these bits of ephemera that you feel like, oh, I don't know if I want to glue this down, but go for it. And then once you've glued it down, try not to second guess it, right? Just go for it. I like the idea of taking the more geometric lines that I drew in here that were already on the page and then kind of scribbling. Plus the scribbling will help to show the difference between the smooth paper and then this more textured paper that's in here. And then I'll have to do some looking around because since this is king pigeon pose, I think I ought to have maybe a pigeon over here. So you'll have to stay tuned for the completion of this page because I really think that'd be kind of fun. A little pigeon maybe with a crown on or something. And I'm seeing the edge of another piece of ephemera that I'd like to add in because it just color wise seems good. And I really like this side, but I'm interested in these words. So I think I'm going to rip this a little bit more so I can have the original color that I was looking at. Which, if you're wondering on that, on the ephemera, the book pages, and like, why are there some hard lines? It's because I dyed all these book pages and then I lifted them up and set them back down. And so this is the edge of one page as it rested on this one. That's how I got those interesting effects on here. Got some text in it that I think kind of speaks to some of what I was sitting with as I was making these zigzag pages. Call out some of those words. All the workers were clearly aware. Paramount danger in constructing. Side again, and let's go back to this page. We'll let let the pokey page dry a little bit more, and then I'll come back and stick that down. But I want to come back to this page that we started because I feel like it needs a little bit of something else. And so one of the things that I was thinking I could do is just kind of play on some of the calligraphic line from the ArtJournalSnacks loops. Just add them in. Not necessarily sticking with the shape of the logo itself, the mark itself, but kind of adding some of these black lines in, completing the shapes in some ways, and just helping it be a little bit more connected to the rest of the page. Another thing that I really hope that you are having fun exploring with the materials from this box are like noticing in yourself, oh, I'm only using the pencil in this way, or I'm only using the click markers in this way. And what happens if I use them in a different way? And when do I tend to do that? You know, when do I tend to want to write? And when do I tend to want to be more painterly? And which tool helps me do those things in each of those different times? It's just, you know, another a little bit of self-awareness, art supply awareness that you can have. Then kind of helps you when you're sitting down and you're not sure what you want to do. It helps you know which supplies to grab, right? Which ones do you want to work with today? That feels a little bit more like this page is a page. It's not just a collection of stuff. I know that's something that quite a few people have asked about, like, how do I know if a page is done? And how do I help the page feel more like a composition? And there's a couple different ways you can think about that. You can think about it as like, well, it's not a composition. This is a journal page, and I don't want it to feel like a completed image. Or if that is something that you really want, you know, one of the best ways to do that is to step away from it for a little bit and come back to it. Come back, look again, see what you see when you look again. And this one feels relatively complete to me. I mean, one thing I might do is with a permanent pen add a little bit of a dark edge to this, or like maybe a little tab so you know you can lift it up and see the leaf a little bit more. But it's mostly feeling pretty done. And so one last thing I'll do on this page is just a little bit of matte medium to help this ribbon stay stuck down. A little bit. Okay. And then, as is characteristic of me, like I always do, I say one more thing, and then there's like always one more thing after that, which is I think I want a little more green on this page just because of the fern. And there's really only the bright green of the pencil. So I'm just going to add a little bit of darker green. Yeah, because I really like what's happening in this lower corner here. So what I just did was Caran d'Arche pencil into matte medium. So you can see there's a little matte medium on here. So I'm just going to wipe that off a little bit. And just know that if you do that, if you do this into like an acrylic ink or matte medium, there will be like a little skin of acrylic on the surface, and it's really easy to just peel that off later. So don't be afraid to combine these with acrylic media that you might think like, oh, those don't play well together. They will. All these materials play really nicely together. And even if they don't, you'll get an interesting result. Okay. So I would love to pause here and see if anyone would like to share either what you've created today, or maybe one of the interesting ways you've been combining these materials or playing with them. And would love to invite you to share.
So if anybody wants to physically raise their hand or virtually raise their hand, let me know. I can spotlight you so everyone will be able to see. All right, Marion, hello. I'm going
Hi.
to.
I always volunteer because I always feel so bad for people who are asking for volunteers, and you got to break that ice. I've actually been working on, I did Junk Journal January. So I've been working on finishing I made this little journal for it and out of junk. And I have a few pages at the end. So I've been working on this one today. Using some ephemera there. And I wanted to say how much I love the Click Art pens. I use them back on this page to color in the purple and the yellow, and it just looks like it was printed that way. It's the nicest finish to it. It just looks so flat and even, and I really have enjoyed it. And I would recommend something like Junk Journal January people if they want to do that, because it's good to practice every day. And even if you hate it, you can cover it all over, which is what I did with this one. So, and I made a little stamp and everything. So I've enjoyed that practice. See, there's a little thing that pulls out. And I'm not a very pretty junk journaler. They're all lace and niceness, and I'm kind of a mess, but I do enjoy it very much. And loving the materials from this box.
Thank you for sharing that. Sarah, it comes to mind that some of the things you showed me before we started would be great for a junk journal.
I am scheming in the background here. I think, yes, it sounds really nice, Junk Journal January, but I think there needs to be a junk journal like every month. So
Always.
I love that idea. Thank you,
Great.
Marion, for sharing. I'm going to hop over to Jill. Feel free to unmute yourself.
Hi there. I did Junk Journal January as well.
Amazing.
And I know I've never finished a challenge, and I actually did it every day on the day. So I know it was like
So impressive.
But here's some of my stuff. I'm pretty new to it, and like some of my stuff is pretty and some of my stuff is, well, actually I have some of my favorite stuff too. But what I did today, I really recommend it because it was a lot of fun. The prompts were very, very intriguing. This is what I've done today. It's snowing out. And then this is a plant for my desk. And then I have some scissors on my desk. And I just kind of went with that. And I used the washi tape, the ArtSnacks washi tape. So yeah,
Joe,
thanks for encouraging us to, yeah.
Oh, can I ask where you're located?
I'm in Colorado.
Oh, okay, cool. Sorry.
Yeah, near Boulder, Colorado. So yeah, it's ugly right now. Yeah, so that was kind of fun. And thank you, Erin, for encouraging us to draw, because right now I'm on a gluing phase and I'm like, oh yeah, I need to draw. So I really appreciate that. So, and I love the supplies. They're always so much fun. So thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Amazing. Thank you. I'm going to hop over to Darla Joe. Let me spotlight you and then you can unmute yourself.
Hi there.
Hi.
Tilt this down just a bit. One thing that I run into is I like to do fun little art pieces on, little pieces of paper, and then, I take them off. They can get scattered and lost. Sometimes I throw them inside of books and run across them later. But I thought maybe it'd be fun to start making an excuse to tape them into my journal. And so I had done this some time ago with, you could probably see the sheen on that, the metallic. I was just testing it out and playing with some new art supplies. I think I might even gotten this in a ArtSnacks watercolor box at one point, but you know, I thought, okay, I'm gonna start taping them down. So I did. I just took some, I think it was like a liquid graphite or something like that, and did the background, and then just taped that on there, and it dresses it up, it makes it look pretty and useful. Now it's in my journal, I can enjoy it. I can flip back through my journal and see it, and kind of getting into a sticker phase, buying books. I bought a series of like 3 or 4 different books. I know it's backwards, I think, for you, but it's bibliophilia. A sticker book. Just went to Barnes and Nobles and happened to run across it, and each page is nothing but stickers that you can peel out and do fun stuff with. And I've been kind of dressing up the opposite pages of the art that I throw in here. Stick it down, and then just take some acrylic and, you know, dress up the page a little bit further. But I was just wondering if anybody else does that. Here's another one. And I ordered a sketchbook from Shinola, made here in Michigan, in Detroit, Michigan. And it's a beautiful sketchbook. And so this is the outer page that they wrapped it in. You can see the little shine to that. So again, I utilize something beautiful and interesting to help kind of, you know, here's this is black and kind of dull, and then boom, here's a pop of color. But this would have otherwise just been stuffed in a drawer and put away and not enjoyed. So I was just throwing that out there to mostly see if anybody else is doing that. Same with an old antique postcard that I had gotten from an antique store. Bought a couple of old coins and glued them on there to make it kind of look like maybe a travel type of theme. But you know, you're talking about using unusual things, and don't be afraid to, you know, stretch your abilities and your thought processes and putting it all together.
Great. Thank you so much. I know Sarah's jealous of those shiny letters on that page.
Oh, I know.
I can see her thinking like, ooh.
Yeah,
So great.
tell her she can get her own on Shinola. I think it's shinola.com.
I've seen those before. Those
Have you?
are some nice letters you got there.
Ah, thank you.
And such a great recommendation to take, you know, a lot of us who play with materials, right? We've got all these like little scraps that are around, and why not put them into your journal and then incorporate more things into them? And, you know, whether that's packaging or little odds and ends of art that you tried something out, like make it into something in your journal, right?
Right.
And maybe it's even just like notes, like, oh yeah, I did this while I was on a Zoom call with this person, and this is what I was thinking about while I was doing this doodle, and now this doodle lives in my journal, and I'm going to add a sticker and then some more materials, and then it becomes a page, and then you look back at it later and it's a story, right? It's part of your life.
And I really enjoy when ArtSnacks sends us you know, little pieces of paper, you know, to try out. But you know, once you try it out and set it aside, it's almost a shame to throw it away, but yet it just sits there and piles up, and it feels disappointing to see them maybe get accidentally destroyed or something. So I like the idea of putting them in a book.
It's safe in your art journal. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else feel like showing what they're working on? Looking in the chat. Rodney says hi. Hello, Rodney. Let me know if you want to share. Me. Okay. Rodney, I see there's two of you on the screen here. So which one would you like to use? It's either you with sunglasses on or you without sunglasses on. Just unmute whichever one you want to use. And we can absolutely have some more time later if you want to check back in later as well. We have maybe like 20-ish minutes left. So Rodney, we'll circle back to you at the end, but Erin, you want to hop back into it?
Sure.
All right.
Okay, so I wanted to give an update on this page, which I had created during the last live stream. And then I found this wonderful collage material that, so again, this was the Crown d'Arche and then getting it wet and then closing the page and drawing over that and transferring some of the wet over onto this page. So it's kind of using the page almost as a printmaking tool by itself. And then I found this wonderful, I was cutting up a calendar of birds. And these are actually some feathers against a dark background. And it was like the edge of the calendar. So I had cut this part off, but it was such a pretty little scrap that I couldn't let it go. So I definitely had to hold on to it. And I glued that down onto this page and I put some matte medium over that. And then this was another leaf that actually came home with me at the same time as these fern pieces did. Again, it was like so pretty that I didn't want to leave it behind. But I thought it would be a fun page to finish up today. And I'm kind of two minds about this, whether I want to go back in with more of the blue or if I want to incorporate maybe a pop of a different color. So you know, one way to think about color choices on pages is to think about complementary colors. So coming in with something that's a little bit more of the orange on this page that has a lot of blue. And what'll be interesting to see as I do this is some parts of this page have matte medium over the top of the Crown d'Arche, so it won't move when I get it wet. And some parts don't. So you can see here, the orange is blending a little bit in with the blue. And so I can kind of soften these lines a little bit. And then up here where it gets closer to the leaf, this is where there's a little bit of matte medium. And so the blue is going to stay its same bright color. So you absolutely can use these over an acrylic medium. Just know that it's going to be a little bit movable on the surface. It won't sink in the way it does on paper. You can see that happening here, but it will stay put in your art journal. So these can be really fun to let them kind of settle into the texture against an acrylic medium. So in one place it's on paper and then in another place it's on the acrylic. And you can accentuate where that edge is. So another thing to think about when you're building your pages, sometimes we do like one page here and one page here. And I like to think about how it's a whole page, you know, this double page spread, as we say in the publishing and book world. I first learned that term when I was editor of the yearbook. I've really been a book person my whole life. I guess it's no surprise that this is my primary place that I like to make art, is in a book. So that up there's actually some matte medium on the paper, and I put water over top, and now you can see those yellow lines are like a lot more like written or drawn lines. Switch a little bit. Just to explore this edge where there's like the white of the page still. I'm going to go with the bright yellow with art and just draw some thick yellow lines. I always tell how deeply into a page I am by how many tools I'm holding in my hands as I'm working. One more thing I want to do, because it's pretty dark here and it's pretty dark here, is just a little bit of dark on the edge, or maybe just on the bottom of this page, just to have it feel a little bit more rounded. This is an alcohol ink, alcohol-based marker. And so here you can really see where that brushiness of the matte medium is on the paper. Whenever I find that, I like to, even if I cover up something else, I like to really make that show up. I just think that is maybe my favorite mixed media texture, is where the paper comes through and there's some other medium on the paper that resists the other materials I'm using. The other thing that many of you have probably noticed me doing as you've watched me journal over all these different sessions is, at a certain point, I just start using my fingers. I was doing this with some folks that I work with, some older adults the other day, just really getting messy. And it was very satisfying. We don't, in our regular everyday lives, let ourselves do messy things often enough as adults. And it's important, right? That sensory experience of making a mess. I'm just going to go back in with a little bit of white in this section, because I like the white of the page there, and I don't want to lose too much of that, but I don't want to have a hard line. can kind of mimic the lines of the feathers also. Some of you may have seen out there in the ephemera world skeleton leaves, where they actually bleach leaves to make it look like this. This one was naturally like this. This happened through water and sun, the leaf ending up this way with that beautiful skeleton effect. So really fun. All right, set that one over there. And before we go to Rodney, I'll just show you a couple other things. We were talking about pattern and texture last time, and I just wanted to show you a couple other ways I've been playing with that. Thinking about like starting with line work and then going into almost like a plaid effect. This has salt into it also. And then of course there's like the zigzag of the stitching on the pages and then some dots over top. So really playing with all of these patterns can exist on one page. I think this book page will probably get something else incorporated into it, like a character or a word or a something. This page feels finished. This is bleeding art tissue, which at some point we'll play with, maybe on one of the mixed live streams. This has some paper on it and then some ink, all sorts of different things. And then here's another version of just playing with ink line work and watercolor and other textures kind of layered over on top of each other. And there's another version of that. So you can really kind of take these same mark making techniques, right? Like line, brush mark, bleeding color going in together, and then like intentional mark making, and play with it in lots of different ways, depending on the colors that you're using. So even a little bit of brushiness from a brush there. And this piece of bleeding tissue made this print. So playing with different marks. All right, so should we go and see what Rodney would like to share with us?
Rodney, feel free to turn your camera on if you'd like. I know you said sunglasses one. Let me remove spotlight. Bleeding tissue paper, Erin. I am intrigued.
Oh, so fun.
Well, Rodney, while you are getting yourself together, if anybody else wants to share, now's the time. We've got like 9-ish minutes left. No pressure to share. If you feel like sharing maybe on the mixed group, you absolutely can. Oh, Rodney, I see you. Hold on one moment. Just unmute yourself.
Hello there.
Ooh, you're a little echoey.
Oh, I'm got my iPad going too, so sorry. Is that better?
Yes, a little bit better. Yeah. What would you like to share with us? Ooh.
Okay, so I'm going to show you something and then you're going to get a little trivia. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so Erin knows this. I was a volunteer for Nature Conservancy and a guide, and I went through a big, you have to do a college course to actually do it. So I know a lot about indigenous plants. And Sarah, sorry to say, a lot of the East Coast has ruined California with all the plants because indigenous is, water tolerant, and and a lot of it's invasive kind of stuff. But anyway, so this is called toyon. Toyon is a indigenous plant to California. It looks like holly back east, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Hollywood Hills is named Hollywood Hills because this toyon is it's a frost tolerant plant, so it can grow up on the hillsides and stuff. And so they named Hollywood Hills after this because the toyon was there, and East Coast people would relate to it, and they sold to lots in Hollywood.
Ah. So
I love
So that's
interesting.
trivia.
Thank you.
You know, I think in the future I got to learn that I need to keep your what is it, the water refillable brush
Mhm.
handy, because you're always using it, Erin.
I'm kind of obsessed with them. I have one in like every pocket and every desk and all the places. Yeah. I mean, I've got my regular water here too and some other brushes, but it's just such a nice, it's a lot easier when you're live streaming too, to not be reaching across the screen for the water. And it also makes it a little bit less likely that I'm going to spill water all over the place when I'm live streaming. So but
Well,
the
so I'm
crayon
going
is a,
to keep it handy. I'm gonna go ahead and use that on the crayon,
yeah.
because Sarah, how do you pronounce the crayon box? What is that?
It's Carandash.
Carandash. That's right, Carandash. Thank you.
Mhm.
So I'm going to do that and color that in, and I think it'll look a lot better. Now, I've always had a hard time being spontaneous. You know what this is here?
Looks like the wrapper from the from my favorite glue stick.
Bingo. So I thought, why not do that?
Yeah.
That's a
With
little
those
bit
red
of
berries.
yeah. So the other thing I wanted to ask you is, let's see if I can open this up. Oh no, it's glued.
Oh no.
I was going to put one of the plants on a page
Uh-huh.
and glue it down. It's stuck. I remember you recommended this before.
Yes.
Can you put that over the top of that and let it dry, and it'll preserve stuff or not?
It would do, yeah, it would do pretty well to do that. Yeah. What I would do is put it down, glue it down first, let
Right.
that glue dry, and then do another coat of glue over the top.
Well, the thing is, I screwed up and I turned the page too soon, and
It happens to the best
it
of us.
stuck down.
Yeah. It happens to the best of us. So for everyone, if this happens to you, one thing you can try, if you have a heat tool, you could try not super close, but having a heat tool up next to it and see if you can soften that glue a little bit that way. Another way is like any of you that ever tried to steam open a letter so you could read it without breaking the seam, you could try to steam it open. The problem with steam is it will make any water-based media move around. So other thing you could do is just like very carefully separate it and know that the rips can become part of it too. I have a page that I recently had some rips on where it got stuck together, and then I just went over top with something else, and then there's a different texture on the page in that area. So yeah.
Well, that stuff is very sticky.
It is.
There it is. I screwed up a little bit. I wanted to let you know that I did do part of your project from last time.
Great.
So there it is.
Oh, I see. Yep. Great.
So thank you, Erin. You're wonderful.
Yeah.
You're teaching me to be more spontaneous. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
So glad to
Love
hear
you.
it. Thanks for the trivia too. That was fun. I'm gonna see
All
if
right.
anyone in my family knows that later.
Yeah, anything you need to know about that, I have tons of trivia on that kind of stuff, working, being a volunteer for Nature Conservancy.
Great.
By the way, I was part of the project that preserved those 30,000 acres down at Laguna Beach from development.
So
That was
great.
turned over to nature from the Irvine Valley Construction Company.
Nice.
Thank you.
We told Donald Brennan, the chairman, this is 500 years from now, nobody's going to know who built all those homes and buildings. But 1,000 years from now, they'll know who preserved that open
that
space
land.
for
So
perpetuity.
true. So true. Thank you.
All right.
Erin, Rodney.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye. I have a virtual hand up. I see Katie. So Katie, I'm going to spotlight you. Feel free to turn your mute off. Go for it. Hello.
Hi. Ooh, don't mind the mess in the back. So we have this amazing ginkgo tree that in our front yard. And when we first moved here, it was in the middle of winter. And so it was like, what is that? Like, it's just this sticky like weird looking thing. And so when it started to get its leaves on and everything, I was like, oh, I want to do something with the leaves. And they're just, so I picked up a bunch off the ground when they started falling in the fall. And I managed to get some rubbings of them. And so today when you showed your fern, I was like, oh, I can use my ginkgos finally.
Yeah.
And so I have a couple of my rubbings in here, and you can't really see the lines, but the rubbings have like such perfect line detail on them that it was just amazing. And so, and like literally the tree is like just this skinny, like maybe 3 inches around, but it's as tall as our house, 2-story house. And it has
Wow.
just these squiggly branches just coming out of it randomly. And so it's kind of exciting to finally be able to use that.
Yeah, what a great page. And is that washi tape on the edges?
It's washi on edges.
Yeah. And
Love that.
it's so great because the washi tape almost has like those same, like those little lines or the scalloped edges of the ginkgo tree.
Yep.
Well, I'm glad that you had the foresight to not cut the stick tree down when it was just a stick tree and it turned
Yeah.
into such a beautiful thing because
Yeah,
they're such beautiful trees.
It's
Wonderful.
still super ugly in the winter, but at least
Yeah.
it's beautiful in the spring and summer.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I have a little tiny baby one right outside the studio. It's little tiny little baby ginkgo leaves, and they're so sweet. Really
Okay,
wonderful.
we've got maybe like 2 more minutes. I see Darla, your hand is up. Feel free to unmute yourself.
Hi there again. So I've been actively trying to clean out my large art studio here, and I'm running across, like, you know, as you can see, little tubes that just don't have a whole lot of paint still left in them, but I don't like to waste stuffs, and that includes my calendar from last year, my calendar book. And so I decided to utilize it and start dressing it up with old paint and using it up instead of throwing it away. And it's been a great way to experiment, play around with squishing the paints together, see what kind of colors I can get. And as I'm doing that, of course, then I run across things that I don't want to throw away, interesting things I can throw in there. This particular calendar book has interesting little sayings down at the bottom that I left open and highlighted. You know, motivational, maybe quotes from famous people and that type of thing. And as I'm, you know, going through here and trying out different things, you know, taking a little measuring cup from like old medicine bottles, you know, putting paint on there and that type of thing. I'm discovering, hey, you know, I really like this, and I want to have this as a journal.
Yeah.
And you know, draw in it and that type of thing. It's a great way to use up that paint rather than just throwing it away. But there's one fun one that I did here I want to show you. I kind of had this like really old thing of acrylic black paint. And so I did like a series of pages in black and was able to use up that whole tube, and that was a lot of fun. But this is one that I did. I painted the whole page in black to start with. And then I took, again, trying to use it up, a silver acrylic, and just kind of painted a little bit of a scene on there, and took a out of an AARP magazine. It was just a blank crossword,
yeah,
and started filling in my own information, things that I want to remember about the previous year, losing my sister and, health issues and that type of thing. And it was just a fun way to kind of stick with the whole black and silver or black and white theme.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. Really great ideas. And, I think Darla's suggestion to use up old paint tubes, like don't let those last little drops of paint. I'm the same way. And I want to recommend a tool. If you don't have one, this is a tube wringer, and you can really like squeeze those last little bits of paint out. And it's also such a great thing to do in your art journal. If you are one of the people that feels like, I don't know what to do with all these blank pages, get yourself a tube wringer, go through your stash of paints, wring out the very last bits of paint and just cover a page with that color. And then you can come back to it later and turn it into something really interesting, or incorporate some ephemera on it, or write a word or whatever else. But highly recommend this tool. So, and
cool.
yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Great idea.
Thank you. All right, so we are at time for class today. So if you didn't get a chance to share, I want to encourage you to show us some of your stuff on ArtSnacks Mix. Erin will be there. If you need to reach out to her, you feel free to message her there. But in the meantime, thank you everyone for coming. This was really awesome, very productive, and inspiring too. So thanks for coming live. And Erin, thank you as always. Any last words or anything?
Just have fun. Go have fun. And I look forward to joining you again soon. I'll probably be back in Healdsburg next time, but who knows? And hope you have a wonderful time. And please, please do share on Mix. I really love our community there, and it's fun to see what people come up with. So
Awesome. All right, everyone. We will see you next time, and have a great weekend.
bye.